I don't think most people realize what a producer actually does, at least a commercial producer. Because producers play different roles depending on what area of the industry they're in. As a freelance director and often cinematographer, I work with a bunch of producers, both in-house at production companies, as well as with freelance producers who have been contracted in themselves. I've taken so much out of the previous chats with industry professionals on this channel, and I know a lot of you have too. So in a quest to see what I might learn I didn't know, I've spoken to a bunch of producers I work with to ask them, commercial producers,
what does a producer do?
That is actually a good question, because it's one that I kind of had to learn on the job. To sum it up to my friends who ask, who don't know anything about it, basically it's all the admin involved in filmmaking. I'd say like anything that isn't directly dealing with equipment or editing, quoting, gathering crew, scheduling, making sure everyone's briefed, dealing with the client directly.
The way that I explain it is someone who kind of takes the key elements. So like you take the director's treatment, you take the budget and you take the schedule and you try and make it all happen whilst keeping all of those three parties happy, which is a real task because you've usually got a director's treatment that probably at least 25% over what the actual budget is. So you're trying to keep the director happy by being able to deliver their creative within a budget and then keep the client happy by not going over budget and sticking to the schedule. So it's a real balancing act of trying to keep a lot of people happy whilst also making it physically happen and bringing in the heads of department and crewing up and doing all those multiple elements to make a commercial shoot happen.
Helen works in-house as the lead producer at Detail Films. We've worked on a shed load together, from a silly amount of social shoots for McDonald's to working with brands like Kind with the Lionesses, and on a recent shoot you may have seen on this channel for Chase Drinks. I wanted to ask her about the power that a producer holds, or more specifically, the gatekeeping power that they can hold around jobs.
A lot of the time I'll get a job because the producer is like, Scott's the guy for the job. Yeah. Not because the client has asked for it, or even just to get the opportunity to pitch. The producer might be pitching a couple of different directors. But so it's like, you might be kind of admin-y stuff, but it's like you're also holding the keys to the creative. Do you think, is that a fair thing to say?
I do, yeah, because the producer will normally have final say on most things, being part of production company. We work very much as a team on deciding these things, but yeah, you definitely get final say on who is on the job.
I think you're right. I think there's definitely a lot of times where a producer is brought in before the directors and then the producer is asked to recommend directors. And the same with HODs. It really varies on the job, obviously, and who the agency is and whether they've got a director. But there's definitely times where I've been asked to sort of suggest everyone from director to HODs, which is obviously quite nice because it means you can bring in the people that you really want to work with. But yeah, so I guess in a way, producers can be gatekeepers, but equally so are directors, and obviously some directors only ever work with specific producers.
I think this whole industry of adverts, TV, film is held by a few gatekeepers. It's an industry that is quite secretive. It's not something that people know how to get into. Having talent is important. Having an eye is important. But actually, your personality and how you sell yourself is incredibly important, because half the time that's how you get the jobs.
Elliot is a producer in-house at Prodigious, the ever-growing production arm of the Publicis Group. We've worked on a number of jobs together since first meeting in 2019. He was the person that actually recommended me for my very first job at Prodigious after I'd cold emailed him out the blue with some spec work a year on from having seen his email in a chain as an assistant to someone who I never actually ended up working with on another job.
What's the best thing about being a producer? What makes you the happiest about it? When you feel like, yeah, this is cool.
This sounds quite sick, actually. I like when it's all going wrong and I get my problem guns out and I start solving them. I can't, when there's a dilemma and there's an issue, arguably when it's not my issue, when there's another issue at hand, when you go into rescue mode and you kind of save the day, it's no better feeling to just sort the problem out and save the day. I love that.
I think be nice to your producer. Be nice to your producer. Not only be nice, remind them that you're there does no harm at all to say, can you drop in and say hello and catch up?
Jason Underhill is not only a producer, but also heads up his own production company, working with fellow producers and freelancers across the board. I wanted to know his take on what makes a good producer.
Charisma is important because you need to be able to lead the team. You need to be decisive and supportive or encouraging of people in the right direction. I generally think it's a collaborative process. It's not a pyramid shape, it's a collective shape. And that's why I love the food and drink specialty, because it's the director, but it's as much the food stylist and it's as much the DOP. It's clearer that it's a collaborative process rather than an execution of a director's vision per se.
You have to charm, you have to convince. When you're having to sell something in, when you're having to convince an agency of a route or convince somebody to give you the location for half the price, you have to have that charisma to sell it or to be able to achieve what you want.
I think it's management of creatives and common sense and being unflappable.
Being nice and communicating well. I think the main thing about being a producer is not saying no, but trying to find solutions, like a creative solution. Like obviously there's a lot of things that are completely unrealistic and unfeasible in a budget that either come from the director or an HOD, but it never sort of lands well if you just say, no, we can't do this. It kind of needs to be a, what about trying this? Or trying to think of ways to find a solution that works within the budget and the creative. Being a good producer is knowing where to push and pull the budget. And obviously once that budget's signed off by a client, that will change so massively throughout pre-production. It's just knowing like what value things are, where people need more money and what the priorities are. Because the priority is always so different depending on each shoot. Some shoots, the costume is way more important than the art department. It really varies. And it's just knowing that and being able to read that from the treatment and the creative. It's being able to recognize what actually is integral to telling the story and delivering that creative and what's just kind of an addition that could be lost if you had to lose it.
I met Alessia at the start of her producing life, working on projects for Camden Hells and Adidas when she was working in-house at a design agency. It was Alessia who was the first producer to let me level up from shooting on an A7S II to hiring in an Alexa Mini. She was also the first one that made sure to set aside the money for a decent colorist. Alessia went freelance right at the start of 2020. Not the most encouraging time to make a crack at it. But in my opinion, as an outsider, she has been absolutely crushing it the past 3 years, working on bigger and bigger projects as she progresses. So she must be doing something right.
What's the most irritating thing you have to do as a producer?
So much paperwork, especially when you have like a big team and it's a nice commercial where you can have a full production team. Like you actually end up just doing paperwork. It is boring. Like no one enjoys paperwork. Release forms, insurance, risk assessments is the one thing that I hate doing. I don't know why. Every time I have to write a risk assessment, I really have to like get myself hyped up for it. And I'm like, right, read the treatment again. Like I'm trying like excite myself to write a risk assessment because it's so boring, but it's obviously so important. That's something that takes up most of my brain when I'm producing is safety and making sure obviously everyone's safe.
Are you a warrior?
Yeah, big warrior.
So you're not the kind of cool producer that would look the other way if I asked you to?
It depends what it is. I have done that many a time because I've been forced to by the DP or the director. But I'm definitely a warrior, yeah. Just because, you know, it is a producer is responsible for everyone on set. It's good to be a worried producer rather than a producer who's like, do what you want.
It's out of my hands. But it's so annoying when you spend all this time like pulling a call sheet together and like all the info's there and you send it to everyone and then someone would just message me saying, hey, what time are we due on set tomorrow and where? And it's like, hey, the call sheet. That's what it's for.
The scheduling of payments because you've been paid late by clients, that's very frustrating. I actually really enjoy paying people and I would love every time to be paying individuals on 14 days and service companies on 30 days. Sometimes the agencies and or clients make that a bit difficult.
That is the answer to your question about what's the most difficult thing. It's the most enjoyable and the least enjoyable is that how many people you're talking to on a daily basis. It's great because it's such a sociable job. You meet so many great people, but you are always, you know, if you look at my WhatsApp history, it's just like every single day, loads and loads of people. We're just constantly going back and forth and like flicking between different projects in your mind and like making sure everyone's got what they need to. It is a lot mentally.
The times you're working are quite mad. You can be working incredibly long hours or you can be working kind of no hours. You can have really quiet periods. And I think for some people, that can be quite discombobulating. You can be a little bit like, oh, where's the consistency here? Trying to organize your life and being a producer can be hard.
How do you stay organized? For me, I've got loads of notes tabs. What do you do? What do you use?
We use Trello, which I find helpful. So I'll have like different lists. I put everything in there so I can like actually visualize it, and I'll prioritize it and what I'm going to do when. For me, once something's in a list, it's like out of my brain. I use reminders a lot, constantly. My phone just has reminders all the time. There's also compartmentalizing things. So we've got our normal WhatsApp where we'll just chat about stuff that are like more urgent things, but then we've got a separate one which we mute notifications on it, and that's sort of where we'll be like, oh, we need to do that, and then it's just like going through it. But yeah, it's definitely lists. So I've got my personal one, and then we've got our detail one, which has everything that's in new inquiry, and it'll be all the lists of products that are new inquiry, proposal sent, quote sent, deposit invoice, then pre-production, post-production, final invoice, and then like you just move everything along like that.
You have a very organized Google Calendar as well, right?
Yeah, we're all different colours, just so you can literally see what's what.
You are my favorite producer that I work with in terms of emails, for one.
Keep to your email chains. When you start an email, use the subject. The subject's there so that you know exactly what that's about. State the client, state the title of the production, state the person you're addressing, if it's the DOP, the director, and then state their name. Really categorize what that email's about and then stick to it. If anyone goes off piste, bring them back to the email. Keep everything on one email chain, because if you're doing a job which is a month long, you want to have a whole documentation of what you're saying, what you're doing. And so that if things do hit the fan and you do have to revert back, the whole story of the job is in one chain.
I've talked about the importance of relationships when getting jobs on this channel before. And gatekeeping is a very real thing. But what are the types of things that producers are looking for in the people that they want to work with?
80% of why we pick someone is because we think they're good at their job. But there is that 20% where, if, we don't get on, we're more likely to choose someone else.
We want to be on set with people who are nice. And I feel like I haven't really experienced anything bad on set for a while, because I think because of all the young people are now coming through, and those are the like lead heads of department that everyone wants to work with, they're setting such a good tone for their crews. And then when you do like occasionally work with like a really old school gaffer, you're a bit like, oh god, like it's a really different vibe, and it's just a different generation. And I'm obviously glad it's getting much better and people are just nicer, because it doesn't take much to be nice.
Everyone in our network is great at what they do anyway, but a lot of it is, say we've got a long shoot like the shoot we were just on where we had overnight stays and stuff. We're picking who we want to be spending time with as well. Two people are equally as good, and maybe one's more expensive than the other. We're probably more likely to go for the one who we get on with. You want to see people walking around and like being really proactive, and I think that goes a long way, and you'll get booked more if you do that.
So aside from being good at what you do, don't be a dick, which you would hope goes without saying in any job, but doesn't necessarily seem to, and be proactive on set. But what about the producers themselves? What should they be doing?
I think it's very important just to always make sure that everyone knows exactly what they're doing and why they're doing it at all times. And then people can sort of make judgments from there.
Taking the time to brief in my production managers, because I know sometimes when I've PM'd and I don't really get a full brief, and you're kind of just sitting there getting little nuggets of information here and there, and it's quite hard to digest the shoot.
You have to have a little bit of skill and experience and knowledge and sometimes just the brass balls to learn it immediately about everything.
Just being present as well, I think. Always WhatsApp me. Like, I hate it when you're trying to get hold of someone or you just want a quick question. Just always being able to answer quick questions, I think, helps. You've got to know the project better than anyone else. On shoots, if say there's the client is there, but they might not be paying attention, knowing what the client wants and being able to step in and say, this won't work because of X, Y, Z. I think that's always very important. Being in the client's eyes.
I've seen some producers who hate spreadsheets and keep everything in their heads, which is quite impressive. But I'm the opposite. I have a tab for every single element of every shoot, which is probably a little bit overkill, but it's just having somewhere, even if I forget to fill in the tabs after the first week of pre-production, it's just having somewhere to download every single piece of information, and also just having everything like written down, because a lot of the work that we do is on the phone, but sometimes, there's times where you've agreed a rate on the phone but not had it in writing, and then that sometimes can cause issues later down the line. I don't do anything groundbreaking except love spreadsheets, which is lame, but it's part of my job.
I call it a production Bible. It's really a Google Doc where I put all information in. The scripts, the deliverables, the creative, you put it all into one doc. It looks exactly like treatment, different stages. You've got casting, wardrobe, locations, potential cast, and you put everything into that document so that all your heads of department and your director can all feed into one document. It's a little bit more work for you as the producer who's organizing the document, I will say, but it helps in the long term.
Having templates for things makes things super easy. A briefing doc that you can fill out and just fire out to everyone.
I'm a big fan of any time-saving templates, organization and efficiency tools that can ultimately simplify production and save time for the fun stuff. Over on the kitbag.shop, I've recently added a whole host of production templates for call sheets, planning documents, release forms, filming notices, and more. Available for you and the rest of the production world now from thekitbag.shop.
What would you say to me if I wanted to be a producer?
Experience is the greatest thing. So because I didn't do the classic runner to production assistant to PM to producer, I was very short on knowledge. So if I went back and thought to myself as a 28-year-old fresh out of film school, I would probably say just go and run for a year, because it's a great job. It's a mini producer runner, because you're okay, so you're reactive often rather than proactive, but it's nearly the same range of things. You might spend more time running to Asda or, getting in the car with some rushes than you would as a producer. But I still do all those things as well. So I think it would have been handy. So don't be shy about being humble and getting on a shoot. I was. That would have made me a better producer.
You're the person that is like, right, film production is what I want to do. Definitely get your social skills up. Being able to talk, being able to converse with different people. And what I mean by that is you are going to have to learn how to talk with people that scare you, people that annoy you, people that you generally just want to throttle sometimes, and then people you love. So really get your social skills up, because that is a fantastic skill to have.
I love it. I absolutely love it. I can't imagine not doing it anymore. And it's so it's just... For me, my previous jobs have been very corporate, and you finish a job and you don't see an end result. And I just love the fact that when you see the final film, you see how much hard work everyone's put into it, and you just feel so proud for everyone involved. Obviously, if it's turned out well, and it's very rewarding. And the amount of people I've managed to meet through my job, like lifelong friends.
Don't think you have to love film, love cameras, love light, love it all. Be a film boffin to be a film producer. I personally love really, really bad films. And I personally, I'm not someone who's running to watch the latest adverts, even though I work in advertising. I just love my job. I love the people. I love the challenges. You don't have to be someone who is an artiste or, someone who's obsessed with film to be in this industry. It is actually a lot more than that.
Obviously, it can be very tough, and you've got to put a lot of mentals into it all, but it's definitely worth it. If you're thinking about doing it, just give it a go. You won't regret it.
I hope you found these conversations as insightful and helpful as I have. If you've got any questions for any of these producers, or if there's a role on the crew list that you'd like me to explore next, then leave a comment below. Watch this playlist of conversations with lots of other industry professionals next, and make sure to subscribe for more semi-helpful tips and interesting insider industry knowledge.